Thank you, Your Honor. I have just a few more questions, Mr. Barrett. One is, in 2008, was it foreseeable that a guest such as Mr. Barrett would do what Mr. Barrett did in order to invade the privacy of another guest?
In my opinion, it was not.
And I have a few questions. I'm going to go a little disjointed. Problem with the break, I write notes down, so bear with me. Would it have made any difference if there had been security cameras in the hallway there at the hotel in 2008 with respect to the allegations made in this case?
In my opinion, no.
And you base that upon what?
Well, from my perspective, reading the totality of what went on here, this was a criminal enterprise. It was more like a terrorist type situation. Cameras typically in a hotel of this size are not monitored, so you're not going to be able to intervene anyway. The camera in and of itself is not going to deter. We typically think of cameras as deterrents, although I think that is being diluted quite a bit, kind of like car alarms. When car alarms first came out, everybody noticed them when they did. Today, when a car alarm goes off, I think most people are just annoyed by it. I think cameras have kind of become rather commonplace. Most of the people that are deterred by cameras are rational people. I think in this particular instance, Mr. Barrett was anything but that. He was not going to be thwarted, and most people that are in that position know how to thwart cameras, the view of the camera, or they wear a hoodie. I mean, that certainly was all going on in 2008. So in my opinion, I don't believe cameras would have prevented this from occurring, no.
Now, there's been some testimony in this case about a hostess stand and the fact that one of those LCD phones was on the hostess stand. Did it comply or did it not comply with the standard of care to have an LCD phone such as was at the Vanderbilt Marriott in 2008 at a hostess stand in a restaurant?
You know, that was the common custom and practice in the hotel industry in 2008 to have back-of-the-house phones at different stations in the hotel.
What were they used for at that hostess stand, if they were there?
Well, the hostess stand again was to make reservations if the internal guest was calling to make a reservation, or again, if there was a room service call, typically it would be there for. And again, sometimes it's just routed, and so if there's an emergency, and the PBX stands for Public Branch Exchange, just the hotel operator. If that line is busy, it will get routed to another phone call, and again, like I said, in case of an emergency, we need to know where that call is coming from.
Okay, and I think I literally do have just a couple more questions left. One, the first is, does the franchisor, in this case Marriott, typically approve the management company, in this case Windsor, hired by the franchisee West End? Is that too garbled?
No, I got it. I think your question, just repeat, is it common custom and practice in the industry, and was it in 2008 for the franchisor, in this case Marriott, to give their approval for the franchisee, West End, to hire a particular management company? And the answer is it's very typical. It happens a lot for the reasons I mentioned to you previously about Marriott's interest in maintaining their standards throughout their brand. If we go stay at a Marriott in Memphis and it's a poor experience, it's going to impact our decision about staying at a Marriott in Nashville or vice versa. That's why it's so important that the management company be thoroughly vetted, and that's why the standards are so important to be met, and that's why we have the policies and procedures and training that we do.
And I'm going to ask this last question. You may or may not know it. If not, it'll come in later. Is there documentation showing that Marriott approved Windsor as the management company that you're aware of?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all.
Mark, my name is Randy Kennard. We haven't met you.
I've never met you before.
I have not. That's true.
You said that you have sympathy for Erin Andrews and what happened to her, right?
And empathy as well, yes.
You're a lawyer, correct?
Yes.
And you practiced law for a while, didn't you?
Yes.
And you did personal injury work.
Very little, but yes, I did.
And you know that as a result of your experience that sympathy is not what is supposed to drive a jury's verdict, correct?
Yes.
You accept that proposition, don't you?
I think the facts should drive and even opinions and things like that, yes.
You agree it's not supposed to influence the jury's verdict, right? Do you agree, sir?
I think people are human, Counselor, and I think a lot of things go into it, but I like to think that we believe in the facts that come out and testimony and the credible evidence and the instructions that they get from the court. And so I think jurors, in my experience, typically rely upon those things to come to their conclusions.
Well, in the balance of things, if all one particular party had was sympathy and not the facts on that side, that should not make the jury find for the party they feel sorry for, right?
I think that's probably a fair recitation.
That's fair. Let's put up the first page of that contract, please. Let's enlarge this a little bit so we can see the names of these people. Windsor Capital Group. Now, you would agree with me that the defense should not try to use sympathy for its side, don't you?
I think my preference would be that the credible evidence
Well,
would be established.
yesterday, Ms. Andrews was on the stand, and one of the defense lawyers stood here and said, now this is a case of you brought against the Vanderbilt Marriott Hotel. Vanderbilt, just to be clear, is not a defendant. True?
True.
And I've lived here all my life, Mr. Barr, and Vanderbilt has a great reputation in this community. It's a wonderful university, great baseball team, college football good sometimes, basketball pretty good. But we don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that Vanderbilt is a defendant, do we? It's not. True.
Vanderbilt is not a defendant as far as I know.
You drive a car, I presume.
Rarely, but yes.
Okay. You got an interstate around there. Where are you from, Houston?
Yes.
You got interstates there?
Yes, sir.
And you
If you drive on them, you deserve combat pay, just so you know.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand combat pay. So you go a little too fast sometimes on the interstate?
Never.
You
No.
never?
Yes, from time to time, yes.
Have you ever found yourself going 80 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone?
I would have to say yes.
Yes. I've done that. And as you crested a hill Have you seen a highway patrol car up ahead?
I probably had that experience, yes, sir.
And did you keep going 80 or did you back it off, Mr. Barth?
Well, in Texas, you have leeway to about 78, so more than likely I backed it down to 78.
Would the highway patrol car cause you to slow down?
The highway patrol car and the probability of getting caught, in my rational thought process, would more than likely cause my instinct to say slow down, yes.
So just the presence of that authoritative vehicle, and it's an authoritative vehicle, right, would cause you to hit the brake and try to get down and obey the law.
More than likely, yes.
Yes. You ever been to a mall?
Shopping mall?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have children?
I do. I have, just to be clear, one child.
One. How old is that child?
31.
Well, that child used to be 5 or 6 years old, right?
I remember that well.
Mm-hmm. And if you're walking through a mall, is this a girl or boy?
Young woman now.
I'm sorry?
Young woman now. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, she was a girl when she was 5 or 6.
Yes, sir.
And if you walk through a mall with your child and you saw a security guard, would you think, gee, I hate seeing that security guard around here. That's really aggravating to me. You wouldn't think that, would you?
I don't think that way, no, sir.
You would think, I'm sure glad to see that security guard here, right?
I think security guards are, they don't annoy me, if that's your question.
No. And they can deter crime. True?
Some security guards possibly can if they're in the right place at the right time. Yes, sir.
You ever watch the video deposition of Mr. Barrett?
I believe I read the transcript of Mr. Barrett.
You ever watched him, though, to see what kind of witness he made, did you?
I don't believe I did, no, sir.
You said earlier you think that he's like a terrorist. Did I hear that?
Well, I felt like the acts that he perpetrated, the fact that it was a criminal enterprise and that he had taken all these different steps, yes, to me that sounded like a terrorist. He committed several illegal acts along the way in order to achieve his objective. And it didn't seem to me that he cared really about whether or not he got caught, ultimately publishing it on the internet.
You didn't see where he testified, actually, I did not want to get caught?
I appreciate that. I did not see that on the video. Perhaps I understand he may have, but certainly his actions didn't.
Well, that would be ultimately for the jury to decide if he would be deterred based on their analysis of him as a witness.
I think that's fair.
And they would be in a better position than you, because you've never even seen the video.
I think I rely on jurors to judge credibility of witnesses, yes, sir. And
I believe you know, as a lawyer, that the credibility of a witness is in the sole judgment of a jury. You understand that? You remember?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think opinions, though, from experts, when experts draw opinions, they also have to draw on the credibility of testimony and facts that they look at in the testimony of the witnesses.
Now, you teach leadership also in this university that you're in, true?
Yes, sir.
And let's go back a minute to September 3 and 4 at the Marriott at Nashville Hotel, all right?
Yes, sir.
And do you know that this was going to be a full house? The house was going to be packed, all rooms booked?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding they were in a sold-out situation. It was the college game day, I think. Is that what you're referring to?
Vanderbilt versus South Carolina, big game, huge game, right?
Yes, sir.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't it make sense? We go back on September 3 or September 4. Somebody's going to hold a leadership meeting in this hotel to talk about the upcoming big game. Fair?
I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Okay, and let me give you a little more minute.
Okay.
Let's see if this isn't probable. Somebody gets the leadership in the hotel together, the heads of the different departments, and says, we're going to have a full house. We want these people coming back. We want everything to go good for them. I mean, something like that could have happened.
Oh, you mean leadership of the hotel team?
Yes.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if that occurred many times, yeah.
I mean, they're getting ready for the game, and they're going to try to do everything they can to make this smooth for these people so they'll come back. Right.
That's the objective of almost every hotel, I'm sure.
Imagine this. Do you think this type of conversation could happen? Whoever is talking, whoever it was, operations of the daily operations, manager of the hotel. And we're going to start getting a lot of people in here about 4 or 5 o'clock. And I want everything clean. I want these hallways looking good. And I don't want any housekeeping carts out here in the hallway. That's going to block things up. Fair?
No.
No. You don't think that would
you're
happen?
talking about, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood. Are you saying 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes.
Housekeeping carts, typically, they finish, sometimes sooner than that, sometimes not. But I mean, if a housekeeping cart needs to be on a floor, it's going to be on a floor. Guests are kind of accustomed to that. Housekeepers are trained to interact with the guests, particularly on a concierge level. You might have a late check-in, so that part I would not necessarily say fair as that part of the conversation.
Who's a better deterrent to a possible crime? A housekeeper who's going in rooms and being in there 5, 10, 15 minutes cleaning up a room on the floor, or a security guard who's walking up and down the floors? Who's better at deterring crime?
Well, I think it depends, but in my experience, housekeepers are oftentimes as effective as security guards. They talk a lot about, in the hotel industry, about housekeepers being watchful, mindful, because with housekeepers, they have a randomness about them. It's difficult to establish a routine for them. They might pop out to their cart anytime, especially might pop out to their cart anytime. Security guards often, even though we try not to have them do routine, so it can be predictable, right, in time, but often we find security guards to establish a routine in terms of their rotation among the floors. So I would say at least housekeeper is as effective due to their potential randomness.
Mr. Dedman said he shared some testimony of Mr. Delmarva with you that he gave in this courtroom. Did I hear that?
Yes, I read the transcript of Mr. Delmarva's testimony. Yes, sir.
And did he give you Mr. Strachan's testimony?
I did see that as well, yes.
The trial court testimony?
The transcript, yes, sir.
Do you recall him describing to the jury that if a hotel employee was on the floor and they saw somebody suspicious, what was the advice to the employee to do? Did you see that?
I'm sorry, I don't recall that.
You missed that part.
Well, if it's in there, apparently I did. But yeah, but if it's in there, I would have given up, but I'll give you my thought about if in fact it is in there, and if Mr. Strachan, according to his testimony, still in the training that they had, I'm sure that they had a reporting mechanism in case something went on like that.
What would you think he would tell the employee to do if they saw somebody suspicious on the floor?
Well, I would think that if you saw somebody suspicious on the floor, you'd report it to probably the executive housekeeper or to the front desk.
He said, I trained them to get in a room and lock the door. Remember that now?
But he also said to call.
Of course.
He also said to call, so I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. He said, let's get in and protect ourselves, right? And then, oh, I do recall that now.
That's good.
Reminder. But yeah.
If this was in the daytime, of course, there'd be no, quote, security guard to call, right?
Well, no, but you're not.
But what would he do? Call 911?
No, I mean,
Go ahead.
But like we talked about before, Mr. Kennard, in that particular situation, if you really felt like there was a health, safety, or life situation, you're on the campus and you can contact assistance quickly. And of course, the National Police are always there. And we do recommend that hotels call 911. It would be rare if somebody was in an active shooter situation or something like that where we would expect a security guard at a hotel to actually intervene.
Then is it fair to say, it's probably pretty obvious, but is it fair to say that to Mr. Strachan at least, he knew it was foreseeable that somebody up to no good could be on this floor who wants to do some kind of criminal thing, that he could foresee that possibility? Fair?
Well, I think, Mr. Kennard, it's reasonable it's a reasonable anticipation for an innkeeper to recognize that with all the guests and different types of guests that come to a hotel and all the oftentimes public access to a hotel, you have guests of guests, you have vendors, that it's certainly can be anticipated that bad things might happen at a hotel. Just in my opinion, this particular set of circumstances, or something even remotely like it, was not foreseeable in 2008, particularly since it was what I described as a criminal enterprise or a terrorist act. You're asking a hotel to connect a whole lot of dots in order to establish things. And to think that a security guard or a camera was going to stop this, in my opinion, I just don't think it would have helped.
Would you like to add anything else? Let's talk about peepholes for a minute.
Okay.
Did you study the peephole issue at this hotel?
I have been made aware of it. I saw the room and I saw the peephole, yes.
Do you know that there was a peephole checklist that says secure peephole? Did you know that form existed?
I saw the housekeeping, as part of the housekeeping checklist for the housekeeper. That's
somebody. Did you ask the defense lawyer, show me the checklist where it says this was checked like it's supposed to be? Did you ask them to show you that?
No, but my perspective again is that it would not be unusual to find that inspection item on a housekeeping checklist. The challenge again is the housekeeping team at the Vanderbilt Marriott Nashville could have checked it that morning. They could have checked it 2 or 3 more times before Mr. Barrett implemented his scheme, and it wouldn't have mattered in this case.
Well, that's your opinion.
Well, it's my opinion based upon 25 years of working with the industry, staying at hotels, 150 to 200 room nights a year, teaching people about traveling safely and secure. So, yeah, given all that, that's my opinion.
But you never did see a secure peephole checklist that was marked on the date when we did this, You never saw that, did you?
I did not. I did see the testimony of the maintenance gentleman who said very clearly that he held people accountable. And I also recall the testimony of Mr. Strachan, who in his time was an executive housekeeper and apparently did very well because they promoted him to director of operations. And Mr. Strachan's testimony, I thought, was compelling around training, education, and accountability. So again, at the end of the day, unless Ms. Andrews had had somebody with her the entire time, protecting her in this case, or she had traveled, I don't think the inspection of the peephole, or even if your perspective is that they did not check it that day, that would have impacted the outcome of this matter.
Would you like to add anything else?
No, sir.
The cameras that did exist in this hotel, was there one at the bar area?
I think there's been a little conflicting testimony as to where they were, but there might have been. I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly.
And that would be to keep the liquor from being stolen, true?
Certainly one objective would be that, yes.
You want to deter somebody from coming in and just taking a bunch of liquor out, right?
Could be part of that, keeping tabs on employees. Yes, sir.
Mentioned an employee doing something wrong. Did you notice what Mr. Barrett said about how he learned how to alter a peephole?
I believe his testimony was he watched somebody at another hotel. Does that sound?
He watched an employee spying through a peephole on somebody inside a room.
Not at this hotel.
No.
Not at the hotel
No.
the subject of this case, but another time.
But there was another hotel where he stood out there in the hall and watched an employee spying through a peephole. True?
I believe that's his testimony,
Yeah.
but Mr. Kennard, sorry.
He watched that man. There could have been a child in that room without clothes on. He could have been a pedophile. It could have been a woman with no clothes on.
Objection, Your Honor. It's motion to limit that covered this. Pardon me?
It could have been a couple in a romantic embrace. And what did Mr. Barrett do about it? I'll give you the answer. Nothing. He took notes. He didn't go back to his room and call downstairs and say, hey, you got a strange employee up here spying on somebody, and you need to get somebody up here right now. Did he?
Don't believe he did. I think that goes to the fact that...
And this is the man that you rely on his testimony about the phone and getting up on the floor. You rely on his testimony, don't you?
When it's corroborated by other credible evidence, given all the evidence in the case, then there are times when his scenario matches up with other credible evidence in the case. And so in those instances, I think you have to, it's more likely than not that that's the way it happened. I think that's a fair assessment. Yes, sir.
Again, the credibility of Barrett is solely for this jury to decide, isn't it?
I think, again, as I pointed out, I think experts also have the responsibility to assess credibility when they come to their opinions.
Well, have you just sort of rejected out of hand the documents that exist? The documents about the reservation requesting to be the room next to Erin Andrews? You just reject that out of hand?
I didn't reject any of that out of hand. I looked at that very, very carefully. But I don't see any evidence where the Vanderbilt Marriott participated in disclosing verbally Miss Andrews' room or intentionally placing Mr. Barrett next to Miss Andrews' room. And at the end of the day, sorry, go ahead.
Well, let's go over some of the documents. I mean, documents are pretty reliable things, aren't they?
If they haven't been tampered with, yes, sir.
Yeah, well, but I think we can assume
Everybody agrees that these
that
are...
they haven't been altered in this
Sure.
case. Bring up trial exhibit 5. You've seen this before, right?
Yes, as an exhibit, yes.
Jason, highlight the 17 and 18 line, M1K1 all across there. And then comments, do not move. Do you know that A1C1 means adjoining and connecting?
I believe there was testimony to that. We got a little confused with the acronyms and the numbers, but I think that's right.
Do not move speaks for itself. Who was authorized, Mr. Barth, in your careful review of all this stuff you've read, who was authorized to write do not move?
Well, typically what would happen, according to the testimony though, when this information is downloaded into the property management system, the people at the hotel, typically the rooms division people, would have the ability to do that, or it could have happened prior to the time it was loaded. It would depend on which system this was on.
Do you know which system this was on?
I can't tell from the way it is, I'm sorry.
But this would be a message to the hotel, this document. This man named Barrett wants an adjoining connecting room, and he does not want to be moved. True?
But I think you're connecting the dots to that. The do not move could have been a pre-assigned room for a concierge level guest, and we don't want that to be disturbed because hotels take a lot of time to assign their premium customers to particular rooms, and so that could have been it.
All right, let's go to trial exhibit 6. (9/4) creation date. Again, do not move. Now let's go back to trial exhibit 5. What kind of room did what kind of bed did Mr. Barrett want?
I believe Mr. Barrett originally requested a king.
If this could have happened, Mr. Barrett. Barrett tells Marriott International, I want a room next to Erin Andrews. Information goes down to the hotel. Let's just assume for a minute that the hotel does not, the personnel that sees this, does not know he wants to be right next to Erin Andrews. Let's just assume that for a minute. Also assume that they really want to get ready and get rooms all organized before September 4th, so there'll be as little chaos as possible. And the person working with this document looks at it and goes, king, adjoining and connected. Well, who does he want to connect to? Is that a logical thought a person would have?
Well, typically that would be cleared up when a guest checks in.
Don't go forward. Wait just a minute, Mr. Barr. When she or he is working with this document. Could it occur to this person, we want to accommodate this silver, whatever category this guy is, he wants to be in an adjoining connecting room to somebody, but I don't know who it is, and he wants a king bed. Could those thoughts go through a careful person at the front desk? Is that possible?
Mr. Kennard, I think for that type of response, I would look to the employees at each hotel's front desk and their testimony, or their thoughts about that.
Well, I said, oh, you're okay. But have you ever served as a front desk person?
I have not.
What I'm asking you is a common sense question, Mr. Barrett. I don't want you to deflect it to what somebody else may say later, and you think that person's going to say it. So just stick with me. If you're sitting there using common sense, and you've been trained to know what these symbols mean, you look at it and you go, Barrett wants to be in a king bed, adjoining and connecting. Is that a fair thought you'd have?
Mr. Kennard, if you're asking me just from a personal perspective,
Yeah.
if you present that, I
Sure.
could say there's a chance that that might happen. There's just as good a chance that it won't happen.
Okay. Did you ask the lawyers for these defendants, show me the room for the king-size room reservation that was made for Barrett? Did you ask them to show that to you?
I relied upon the testimony that was given for that.
Is there a document that you've seen that shows that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Kennard, you're testing my memory. I don't recall.
That's what this is a serious issue, Mr. Barrett.
Very well could be.
You don't have any memory of seeing that, do you?
I think his reservation as a concierge member, as a Marriott Silver member, believe it would have probably been shuffled into the king thing. That's probably what his preference was noted on that, so that's what I would rely upon.
You know that if there was this person who's looking at this reservation scratching his or her head going, I don't know who Mr. Barrett wants to be next to. Somebody, particularly if you have the do not move, who is authorized to write the do not move in there? Do you know?
No, I think there'd be several people that might have the ability to do
I
that.
want you to assume that there will be testimony tomorrow that in order to write do not move, somebody had to go to the manager, a management person. I want you to assume that.
Okay.
If that's the case, is it looking more and more like somebody's confused and they need some help on what to do? Is it looking a little more like that to you, Mr. Barnes?
I don't think so, Mr. Kennard. I think one of the things we've got to keep in mind here is that it seems to be coming back to the fact that you feel like this hotel was exceptionally busy over these 2 days, and they were going to be sold out, but this hotel had been sold out often previous to this time, and their staff was used to dealing with challenges like this, and they had processes and procedures in place to handle it. I think the testimony was pretty clear that they had their pre-meetings where they would pre-assign rooms, and so I think the testimony was pretty clear about how all of this came about, and I'm sure the jury will rely upon that testimony for that.
Do you think anybody who worked for this hotel could get into Marcia and find out what Marcia says or not?
The testimony was that Marcia was very complicated, very non-user friendly, and that I believe Mr. Strachan testified that he could access it, but I don't recall any testimony that he did access it during this time frame.
Somebody years ago, faced with this dilemma, could have gone to management and said, I don't know what to do here. Why don't we look at Marcia? Can you do that? And then somebody could have looked at Marcia and said, it's simple. He wants to be next to Erin Andrews. It's simple. It's right there. Do you agree or you want to argue with that?
I'd like to think, as two attorneys, we're not arguing, but I don't see it as simply as you just stated it, but I suppose, there's no indication in any of the testimony that I saw that it was routine to go into Marcia. I mean, we had the person from Marriott International describe how complex it was. We had the testimony from the other people at the hotel itself that some weren't even familiar with Marcia. So to think that that would be their thought process, I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that would be the case. More likely,
It's conceivable to you that people at this hotel were competent to get into Marcia if it needed to be done. Is that true?
I definitely think there was a high level of competence in the employees at this hotel, yes, sir. Whether that equated to them being trained on Marcia and the ability to access Marcia like you're talking about, I don't know the answer to that. That was a very proprietary, sophisticated system, and the testimony by a lady that used it frequently was that it was complex and not very user-friendly. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
Who was that woman that said what you just said?
She was the vice president of reservations for Marriott. I apologize, I don't recall her name.
Well, going back to our hypothetical, somebody could have been wondering, I don't know what to do here. They got some help. Somebody got into Marcia. Barrett wants to be next to Erin Andrews. Where is Erin Andrews going to be? Or where is she? 1051. Well, 1049 is going to be open. Put him right there. Give him what he wants. Could that happen?
I suppose it could have happened. It's not what I concluded after reviewing all of the evidence and Mr. Barrett's testimony and listening to the employees about the way they recall things happening on that day.
Well, that's what
it was a much different. I'm sorry. So my opinion is certainly different than that hypothetical that you just painted.
That's your personal conclusion.
No, that's my professional opinion based upon my 25 years in teaching and writing and interacting with the hotel industry for 30 years or so. That's my opinion.
Again, you understand that the jury may come up with a conclusion that's not quite consistent with you.
I do understand that.
And so you've got 100 hours in this case?
Give or take.
$350 an hour?
That's my fee, yes, sir. It's paid for my time.
You've worked for Marriott before on a case, have you?
Many years ago, I was retained by Marriott on a case involving a swimming pool incident.
That's all, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, may I be excused? Thank you.
I think this is much better.